I'd like to answer a few questions that have been thrown my way recently regarding various topics. But first, I want to give a bit of an update. Now, for some reason, YouTube has decided that I can upload videos longer than 15 minutes. I mean, I had a message there waiting for me when you hit upload. It said, "Congratulations, you're now enabled to upload videos longer than 15 minutes." Now, I don't fully know why this is because I haven't been sent any explanation by YouTube. But the point is, it's there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check with YouTube first to see if this is legal. I'm going to take some of the very old Chinese movies, the ones that were made on the revolution and whatnot, and see if I can upload them. I'm going to check with their copyright people first, just to see if that's legal and they're going to let me do that. So if you can, Sun Shining Over Lhasa, Sparkling Red Star, those movies, I'm going to upload them to the Maoist Rebel News if YouTube will let me. Second of all, because I no longer have a time restriction, I'm going to do more stuff on the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, very, very in-depth. The one I did on debunking Mao's famine, originally it came out to about 17 minutes, but because of the time restrictions on a single video, I had to cut it down to 17, which means now, in the future, I'm going to do it full. I'm going to redo that video, but with like a full explanation, leave all the stuff I cut out. Plus, I'm going to be doing a video on the Cultural Revolution itself, explaining everything, all the little aspects, and even the stuff that's the little known stuff that even the critics don't even bother mentioning. I don't just mean good stuff either. I mean some of the really radical programs that they had that some of the individual communes attempted. So I'm going to be doing that. So you will get at least that, and I'm not going to be under time restraint. So if it comes out to like 25 minutes, I'm still going to do it because despite the fact that it's going to be a very long video, it's going to be very well worthwhile. Now, one question I was asked was by one of my subscribers saying, some guy came to my channel and said that I can't be a communist if I like video games. Is that true? Well, let me put your mind at ease and anybody else who might have been wondering the same thing. That's absolutely untrue. What makes a Marxist is not playing video games or not playing video games. What makes you a Marxist is your particular belief in the relationship between people and the means of production. If you owned a means of production and you employed other people in its use, then you really couldn't call yourself a Marxist, and you really wouldn't be. You would be a capitalist yourself. If you owned means of production and you didn't employ other people in it, like say you had a home business and it was, say, just you were the only employee and it was your business, well then no. Even though you owned a means of production, you didn't employ other people in its use, so you would not be a capitalist. What you would be is an autonomous third class that Marx did refer to. You own your own means of production, but you don't employ anybody else in them. So you could still be a Marxist. But the person who left that comment on your channel saying that, well, you can't be a Marxist because you like video games, is basically saying, well, a video game appeared, such and such video game appeared in a capitalist country, so therefore you can't enjoy it and you'd be a traitor to your beliefs if you did. Well, if that was true, you know, space travel, laser eye surgery. So if you ever had laser eye surgery, you can no longer count yourself as a supporter of capitalism because, well, laser eye surgery was invented by the Soviets, so therefore you can't be a supporter of capitalism. Or if you've ever had to take insulin because you've had diabetes. Insulin was first synthesized by a Chinese communist scientist back when it was still communist. I can't believe I still have to make that point. So no, he's just taking a cheap shot at you, and if he really believes what he's saying, then he really doesn't know what he's talking about. So I wouldn't worry about it. You can still play video games and still be a communist. Now this is a message I received from a subscriber, and I'm going to answer the questions that are in it. Okay, first off, I'm a big fan. I have a few questions for you. If you have the time for a video response or just a PM back, I'd really appreciate it. My first question is, as revolutionary Marxists, how should we change the way we interact with financial institutions? Is owning stock inherently unethical? I know that Marx himself owned stock in a British newspaper, but obviously the implications of the market were very different back then. Personally, I inherited investments with Edward Jones, and I've been wondering, should I just pull them out, and what I should do with the money if I did. Well, to answer your question, the relationship between people and stocks depends on the form it takes. Now, technically speaking, you would be, if not rich, at least petty bourgeois by owning stock. Now, I personally believe you can be petty bourgeois and still believe in socialism, still believe in Marxism. There is a person I talk to frequently on the internet who comes from a petty bourgeois family. I won't say his name because every time I do, people go around and start attacking him. So, and he's in a petty bourgeois family, although him and at least his father anyway, still believes in socialism. You could still be petty bourgeois, but you would have to understand that that privilege that you have by owning stock would be lost. You realize that the benefits that you have by owning it are going to have to come down for other people to come up. Now, in terms of the morality of owning the stock, it really depends on what you own stock in. Obviously, if you own stock in cigarettes, sell it. That's probably the most highly unethical thing you could possibly own stock in. If you own stock in weapons manufacturing, I would dump it. If you own stock in, say, hell, even Walmart, I'd get rid of it. You would have to actually look at what it is that you own stock in. If it was like a department store, maybe it's not that bad. One thing that you could do if you really weren't happy with the fact that you own it, but were not really willing to give it up, is to take any revenue that you receive, any profit that you receive from those stocks and put it towards something beneficial, like take the money and give it to a socialist organization that you believe in. Or you could take the money and from the revenue that you generate and say, sponsor some children in a third world country. It'd be pretty hard to argue that you were being selfish if you sponsor children in another country. So you could do that. If you really felt that owning stock was completely unethical, or you had completely unethical stocks like cigarette manufacturing or weapons manufacturing, or if you own anything in Halliburton or if it's 27 subsidiaries, then yeah, you should sell it. It would depend on what it is that you own stock in, and that would make the difference. The second question was, what are the institutional changes to the structure of a true communist school system, particularly college and higher education? Okay, well, there's three different views. There was the Soviet view, and that's just changed the curriculum. I really didn't see any revolutionizing of the education system under the Soviet Union. They did obviously make it universal where anybody can go, but I mean, they've got that in some countries already. At the time it was a completely radical idea, but now it's not just getting people in, but changing the way people are taught. That's radical now, or not necessarily changing what people learn. Now, the Soviet Union just made it universal, and they changed it from, instead of preaching capitalism, to preach socialism, and how that eventually degenerated into something that one could hardly consider socialism in the end. Now, the other view is the way Cuba did it, where the education system was no longer just churning out people the same way capitalism does, and the way Soviet Union just churned people out for socialism. In Cuba, you know, they had the whole thing where there was a political consciousness and a social consciousness being built at the same time, where students go out in the fields and they see how peasants live, and they live the same life. They live the same life that everybody else has, so they can see what it is they're a part of and what it is that they have a duty to build better for, and what it is that they're trying to change. Now, the last one, the one that I personally prefer, is the one that revolutionary China went through. During the Cultural Revolution, the education system was to a large degree democratized. I mean, before it became revisionist after Mao was gone. It was democratized in that if students thought that this was a bad thing to be teaching, they would report it and they would rebel against those teachers. Particularly in 1966, tons of students, I don't have the number, I can't remember the numbers offhand, showed up in, I think it was Shanghai, and demanded that the teachers teach something different. They saw they were teaching revisionist policies. They were teaching selfishness and a backward social consciousness, and demanded that they be replaced. The main point was that education was democratized. The students decided what it was they were going to learn. And one of the things that gave the Cubans the idea that they did was that they would go out into the fields. They say, there was theory, practice, theory. They would learn the theory of what it was they were doing. Then they would go out, do it alongside the people who actually did do it. Take that experience, go back, and reanalyze the theory according to how the theory worked out with the practical experience. So it was a much better system. Here, it's straight theory. This is how it goes. Now go out and do that. I mean, we're all familiar with from movies when the cop finishes police foundations, and then he goes out and he finds out that it doesn't work on the street and like the way it does in his textbook, or how practicing medicine is radically different from the way it is in the textbook. I'm always reminded of the episode of Star Trek where Worf had to help Keiko give birth in the lounge in 10 forward during the power out, and he made the remark, "This is not like it was in the simulation." And then she screams out, "I'm sorry, it's not that way." It's just a funny story, always reminds me of that. So there was the theory, practice, theory. You learned the theory of what it was you were trying to do. You went out and did it, and then you went back to the classroom for more theory and adjusted it according to your practical experience. Now what this does do is it allows the theory to change according to how times change. Obviously, if school remained the same all the time, a draftsman would come out of college or university and be like, okay, I got my T-square, I got my pencil, I got my ruler, bam, and then he walks into the job and everything's computerized. So obviously it has to change. Now with the theory, practice, theory, this way the students can keep up absolutely with the way things are, so that when that class is over, they have the new theory to teach the next class, and the next class will do that theory, practice it in real life, and then come back with a new theory. So that way the education system can keep absolutely in line with the way things are. And this is a tremendous advantage to a socialist education system, which is why I point to particularly the Maoist education system in China as being the true path to a better understanding of ideals. Now there's a ton of videos that you could go to expand this idea, like stop making schools like factories. We're just churning out ideas and just all the other stuff that you could see about in the other video. I'm not going to bother going into that. I don't really have the time. I just stuck purely with the Maoist principle of education reform, also along with allowing everybody to get in. If you're good enough to get in, you can be in. There's no limits to how many people are allowed to be in a particular education system. And I would also like to point out that a lot of colleges and universities were made attached to factories and production facilities. When the collective ownership of factories and production facilities started, obviously people who were previously completely illiterate wouldn't know how to run a facility, so they would have these schools attached right on the actual facility, and then they would be given some time off work to go learn how to do this, so that while you were working and you were getting your wage for the work that you were doing, you were then increasing your knowledge at the same time, and you weren't charged anything for learning this information. So then you'd be able to go back into the facility and you'd learn how to run it, and everybody could make informed decisions on what it is that they wanted to do. That's the true ideal of a socialist education system. It's not simply a matter of just letting everybody in and making it a universal healthcare system. It's much more than that. It's not universal in terms of quantitative, but a qualitative change as well. Also, can you recommend an essential read in Marxist theory? I have read the Little Red Book, Maoist Economics, and the Revolutionary Road to Communism, the Shanghai textbook. One book that I particularly suggest that you read is very good. And I am planning on reading On Contradiction and on correct handling of contradictions among the people. Once again, thanks for the videos. Now, okay, you're welcome. Those ones that the person who sent the letter suggested are very good ones. Among some of my favorites and ones that are very, very informative are The Communist Hypothesis by Alain Baido, The Investment Theory of Politics, The Battle for China's Past by Mo Gao. Very, very good book. It is an awesome book that just cuts through all the BS put out by the bourgeois media and Jasper Becker. Another good one, Introduction to Marxist Theory by Ernst Zundel. Ernst Zundel or Mundell, I don't remember. Anyway, it's the Introduction to Marxist Economics. Very good book, because obviously the book Capital is very complicated and the antiquated language makes it very difficult to understand. Even I had a lot of trouble with it. If you read Introduction to Marxist Economics by Ernst Zundel, I think it's Zundel. Anyway, if you read that, it takes all that stuff and puts it in plain English so that it's a lot easier to understand. Because, as I said, Marx had just an infuriating way of writing where, I don't know, maybe he made it so hard to read just for the lulz, I don't know. Another one, one I recently purchased, Zombie Capitalism by Chris Harman. That's very good. That goes very heavily into explaining the current crisis, explains Marxist crisis theory, and at the beginning it also has some stuff debunking some of the capitalist perceptions of Marxism, where it says, well, Marx must be wrong because of this. Well, it debunks a great deal of that in the beginning of the book, so that in itself is actually very useful. And I already said the Maoist Economics and the Revolutionary Road to Communism, the Shanghai textbook. And like I said, that one's pretty good. Those are the particular books that I do recommend. Those are very good. So in terms of the questions that I've been asked lately, that's pretty much it. Oh, okay. One question somebody asked me was, oh, what does it mean to be a Maoist? Okay. We all know what a Marxist is. And then Lenin came along, and then it became Marxist-Leninist because understanding how things had changed since Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto. It's just an updating the theory and understanding it in the age of imperialism. And then it's Marxist-Leninist Maoist because Mao came along and things had changed even more since Lenin was around. You know, Lenin died in the 20s and Mao wrote it up in the 60s. So there was a huge change between those times. So it's just giving a full updating version. How it's saying it is to a large extent not just the proletariat in one country against the proletariat in the same one. There's also rich countries versus poor countries. And one only has to look as far as Walmart to see exploitation in the third world. So that's mainly the reason someone would be a Maoist. It's just the updating of the Marxist thought into like our time. And also Mao has a ton of stuff on the dialectic, and he goes into a great deal of stuff on the dialectic. He really updates that as well. So that's pretty much the main questions that I'm ever asked. So stay tuned to the Maoist Rebel News for more good stuff.